love for the Lord. Ah, my dad was a leader in the Brotherhood locally and regionally. Helped start churches, make the calls. His honesty, and my mother always caring for people. But let me tell you about my father. We were poor. And we leased from this huge conglomerate. And you would buy the leases. Everybody in the region where I was. And forget I said this. Grandpa Elbers was a good man, but money is money. And he asked these people that had huge amount of money in states and their directors, and that's my son-in-law. And he can't make it very long. He's has 1 year lease, and you know the family, his dad's, and in their house. Can't you find one? Yeah, as a matter of fact, the guy's family had a nice farm, nice buildings, and they quit several years ago not paying lease. And we're going to forego. And there's a tough farm. It's going to take a lot, but you're going to get a good buy.
How did he buy it? With what money?
My grandpa said, "You're a hard worker, and I'll borrow you. You can loan from me."
To your dad.
And he reneged on letting my dad forego. And he said, "Not with kids. They don't have anything. They're not very bright." Then he lost it, and then another, and my dad wouldn't do it. And then there was a man that my dad knew him. He was a kind of a philosopher, and he always needed help. Your grandmother and grandfather in the winter time would get up when it was dark and hire out by hand, shuck corn. In one family where they wouldn't even give you a cup of coffee. But not this man. And he said, "Urban, your son Donnie, I like that kid. Have him bring the pony over. I want to talk to him." What? He said, "Well, I want you to sit there. I want to give me his farm when I die. Own farm." "No, you must have some else." "No, I know people who haven't ever cared for me. And all the pies and all the good things. You got paid so much for working really hard by the hour. I want Donnie."
Who was this?
His name was Robert, I was going to say now, a neighbor.
Okay. Did it happen that he left his farm to you?
And my dad said, "No, Bob, Canuck." But the one that really, one of the people that worked for these people that had all the thousands of acre, and I'm sure Grandpa Elbers they told, there is this beautiful farm, but he's lost a lot of money, and he can't pay his rent, and it's overdue. And you've been a big farmer, and your brother-in-law, we think you should have it. Because his bank, he's due. So I went over with my grandfather and father. And old McDonald's had a farm. Oh, it was fancy. They had a big scale, and that was in music on it. And I stood behind it. And my dad said, he said, you got a good crop out there. If you could hold on to the bank, if you could assure, and I could give my knowledge that you got enough, in so many days you will have sold to the elevator to make it pay. I know some people, they're good people, maybe that'd help. He said, no. No, you got a little boy like that little boy. I wish I had a grandchild like him. My dad said no. "50 years, that man would ask, would my parents come to Lincoln? They did lose the farm. They had a daughter, she did well, and I got a long letter from her. That was my dad. He would help anybody. And his father was just like that. When he ran for road commissioner, it was a laugh. One of my relatives, Grandma Cross's son, ran for commissioner, and I heard her and said, "How could you do that? That man helped us. When your dad died, he was there, and he helped, and he helps people, and he gets people job that needs work. How dare you, my son?" My Grandpa Johnson and my dad. Yeah.
What are some of your favorite memories growing up in Emden?
People who cared for one another. I don't know if you want to say this, but the Ladies' Aid would have hundreds of people, and they'd raise money for charities. And some people could give a few dollars, but you'd have people go out and ask. And I remember I and Carol Arnold's son, about my age, we rode with him and carry stuff and go to the door. And they got to this place where two members are blind, but they wanted to give something. And they gave a couple chickens. When they had the dinner for me, they had two. One was at the community house. And my mother was stopped by two of those people. And they put their arms around me. They became church members. Mother, make more ties. But my dad, mother, not so much, we need money. And not everybody's that way. When my Uncle Milton, who was wounded many times, and when he left the farm, and they wouldn't take, Grandpa Johnson didn't have money, but he bought a little farm for him to go on. And we paid what the place was worth. And my Uncle Roland, he and my Uncle Nelson, and I think we bought the place and the floors were all redone. And then we moved in and they were all sanded. They were just Pastor Detchen, when I didn't hear from Joe, my dad took care of it. But when I was in seminary, I did the liturgy, and they would, in Emden, they would have offering. When I was a student, I'd preach there, and they'd have an offering. And I saw people throw in 20s. I know people from a neighboring congregation because they had Rademacher blood, and my grandma was Rademacher. And I saw a nun who was a big wheel come to Emden and hear me preach. She was she was the assistant to the cardinal when he died in Chicago. She had studied twice in Rome. And then when the cardinal died, she said, you want to go to Rome. Or come with the next cardinal. She said, no. She said, I know the 3 worst school system, 2 in the Catholic Church. And I want to go there, and I want you to back me. She did that. And then she was old, and they said, we need for the mentally helping in St. Louis, we want you to take it over. And then they had a big deal for the Catholic Church and big wheels from all over. And anything you want, she said, anything? Anything you want? Anything? Yes, absolutely. Do they have to be Catholic? Anybody. Well, you know an official of the Lutheran Church? I want him. Not the liturgy. I want him to preach the sermon. Me. It's amazing. And she saw to it that relatives got some of her monies that didn't go to the Catholic Church. Amazing.